this is my story about my experience with sexual abuse. The exact age that I recall it happening is hard to pinpoint, but as best as I can kind of narrow it down in my mind, it's about 11 or 10-ish years old. And I recall it being back when I was living in Langley. We lived in a complex, and I had a friend, and I would routinely stay over at his house. It wasn't really an issue. And at some point in his time living there, they had a roommate. And I remember going over to his house. It was, again, not too abnormal to sleep over. And I remember being told that I would sleep in, and again, I didn't think anything of it. I thought, okay, I probably even thought, that it's just going to be me. Maybe he's sleeping on the couch. Like, it didn't cross my mind that anything odd would be happening. And I even went to bed by myself later that night. So I woke up, and I wasn't alone. And moving kind of forward in that, it first off started with just kind of touching. And I don't think it was known that I was awake at that point. I do recall it's like just silently sobbing and crying and wishing and hoping that someone would come up the stairs and stop what was going on. Oddly, I remember the door being open and I could see the light from the TV. That's something that sticks with me. And I just thought, if someone knew what was going on, could they stop it? And eventually, it turned into more interactions and more touching. Eventually, after that, I remember rolling back onto my side and while still being touched, crying myself to sleep. When I woke up in the morning, I was alone again, and I don't particularly recall even thinking about it or having the inclination that I need to tell someone about what just happened. And after that, as far as I can look back, I don't have memories of myself thinking about it. It's not until I'm about 16 years old and in my room where the memory comes back. And I just remember a sinking feeling, thinking, great, now this is something I have to deal with. I did open up to it a bit to my best friend at the time. This would have been a little while after the memory coming back. He was 2 years younger than me, so he really didn't have the capacity to help me with it and kind of coming forward about that. But just getting it out, I think, was a good first step. And then as I kind of got older, the feeling of anxiousness, kind of knowing that I would have to deal with this and wanting to deal with it and seeing more of the effects that this had on me emotionally, with my anger, with sadness, and not truly understanding how it was playing into relationships that I had, mostly kind of with family or friends. I didn't really get engaged in too many romantic relationships. I believe largely because of just the fear of intimacy. At that point, it was then at about, it would have been 2016, I believe. I started work at a pet store in Surrey, and I had a coworker, an older woman, and her and I worked quite a bit, built a bit of a rapport. And she was very supportive. And while I didn't directly open up about what I had experienced, just her support and kind of encouraging me to seek help for my obvious kind of challenges and struggles that I was showing, just kind of feeling down and maybe even depressed at times. Kind of motivated me to take the next step. And so it was actually Valentine's Day of that year, or 27, about that time. But I just remember Valentine's Day, I'm going to show myself some self-love, and I just decided I'm going to go walk to the complex that this happened, and see what I can remember, because I want to move forward with this and gather my thoughts. So when I do move forward with the police, I can kind of at least make some sense of it. And it just kind of snowballed that day. I went to that place and I walked around, and I still felt confident in kind of my decision to be there. And then I thought, well, why don't I just go to the police station and ask, what does someone do in this situation? And when I got there, they asked, would you like to speak to an officer? And I guess just the momentum of that day and everything behind me said yes. So I waited in that lobby. I didn't tell anyone I was doing this, so I was alone. And I guess just speaking on that experience, I don't regret doing it that way. But it definitely would have been nice to have some support there. And I don't hold that against anyone, because like I said, I chose to kind of do that and not say that to anyone that was my intention. Anyways, I talked to the officer there. Really great officer. I can't speak highly enough of how he treated me with respect, with dignity, how he heard my story, how he made me feel heard and seen. And I think that really helped me feel comfortable in retelling the story in detail to him. And once I left, I've never thought back onto the feeling of what it was like walking out of there until this moment. But I guess there was a sense of definitely relief. And I think, kind of looking back, the fear of just that whole day and moving forward with that decision, that weight off the shoulder of that first step was a very important moment in my healing and recovery from that. I believe afterwards, I got in contact with Victims Assistance. It might have been that same day, but regardless, they directed me towards an organization called, I may have this slightly off, but the BC Society of Male Sexual Abuse, or Survivors of Sexual Abuse, where I would proceed to do, almost with some gaps, but 2 years worth of counseling there. And my counselor was an extraordinary gentleman. He really helped me move through a lot of what I was kind of hurting with. I think his approach and his compassion really showed in the way he believed in me. I think that was an important aspect of healing too, having someone, and I guess that's kind of what I felt with the officer too, is he believed me. But yeah, we worked really hard. I went, aside from a few pauses every week, we worked very diligently at identifying, what emotions I was really going through and feeling. And that's something that until that point in my life, I had very little awareness of. I could feel sadness, I could feel anger and joy, but to say that I felt, unseen or abandoned even was not something I could have discovered quite on my own at that point. And then, we parted ways when he went back to school. And I do have to thank and send some appreciation to Victims Assistance. They were extremely generous in allowing me to have support in financing this counseling. I couldn't have got to that place without them. That's a huge piece for me, and it's something I don't know who got to decide to approve my funding over and over again, but if I could say thank you to that person, I would, or people. And then just kind of moving on, and it's been about 2 years almost since I finished the counseling then. In that time, I started a relationship. I have a kid, a son. I'm now trying to speak out and give back to the community that helped and supported me, and also to other men that could be going through this, and even other kids that are struggling to come forward or talk about what they experienced. And then looking back on kind of, some of the difficulties surrounding my experience. Unfortunately, I didn't grow up in a house that felt particularly emotionally safe. And so I think that contributed to some of the hesitation with coming forward. And if I would speak on that, I would say to any parents concerned about this happening to really facilitate and help foster a house where emotional safety is felt throughout the kids and the parents. And that would definitely be a step towards I would like to say, having's not happened, but obviously at this point in the kind of narrative it has, but at least the kid can come forward and start to deal with it, or address the issue, and the healing can begin from it. Or if it's reoccurring, have it stop altogether. I also when I look back, I think we could do more to help men let me try that again. I think we could do more to encourage men to not feel like it's their fault. I struggle to say, but fortunate enough to kind of have that nugget of truth in there. I knew it wasn't my fault, but that didn't mean I didn't feel like it was. I tried not to hold myself to a standard of, well, I should have just got up, or I could have stopped it. And I tried to look at it as, as a little kid, and this adult had a lot more power over me, and that still was in there, and made it difficult to look at myself in a healthy way, and I think something for me that stuck out too, as I've looked back, is looking for signs in your kid of kind of what may be going on. I recognized afterwards that, there was a lot of poor self-image. I recall not wanting to look in the mirrors afterwards just because I hated myself. And I thought I was ugly. And I remember anger becoming an issue at that point in my life, and having outbursts. And I feel it's okay to use this quote. And I remember my mom saying once, I told her that, she worried about it with my sisters and didn't consider it as a possibility that it could have or would happen to me. And so as these anger outbursts would happen, I was looked at, or what I feel I was looked at, as more of a kid with an anger problem rather than a kid that was hurt and didn't know how to talk about it or express it, or at that point even remember why this was happening. So I think kind of maybe allowing a space to reframe just how we are looking at our kids and the reasons that they are acting the way they are will also be an important factor in helping determine what truly could be going on for them. Just as of recently, more and more has come out as I've started to look at relationships with the people in my life, and particularly my parents. And I don't want this kind of dynamic to happen to other families. And so what I kind of mean by that is there's a lot of resentment I have towards them from that time, looking back, because of not feeling seen, because of feeling kind of emotionally abandoned, because of feeling unloved. And while I don't think that they didn't love me, it just, as a kid that was being told I was something I wasn't, and not being, like I said, seen kind of as this hurt little kid, I think that started to foster a belief that I wasn't loved. And I think, I know I don't want that to build in other kids and have them grow and resent their parents, and have dynamics in families where people don't talk, or there's anger and separation. I think helping raise awareness and giving back in this way is the least that I can do, and hoping that this message will be a voice for change for that. As a man with the experience of being sexually abused, even though I never had a direct experience of someone expressing disbelief towards my experience, there was still what felt like this intrinsic idea that I wouldn't be believed. And I don't know the exact factors for that, but that is something that would have been helpful in my experience, is also kind of letting men know that, you will be believed. And I think that might be especially important and true for kids. And while maybe not something particularly at fault, I can say it wasn't helpful to have that kind of internal dialogue going on, and maybe having men and boys be addressed in a way that helps establish that sexual abuse is something that does happen to us, and we're not here to judge them.